finally talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to Connecticut.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Little Thursday morning edition, Air Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Air Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. You know, we did our live shows Monday and Tuesday from Vegas. Yesterday was a travel day. We were going to do a live show. We weren't able to, but we got ourselves a loaded, jam-packed Thursday show. We got a lot to discuss. We're going to open. College football playoff rankings are out. You know, we're not going to talk a ton about them. They came out about 36 hours ago now. But if you don't think that the SEC propaganda tour has already begun, you don't know college football. We'll discuss the latest as one coach is already claiming that the whole system's rigged. Give more SEC teams bids. Surprise, surprise. From there, we will talk a little bit about Auburn. An interesting name emerging as a potential candidate for the most recently vacated head coaching job in the SEC. And then from there, a little college hoops. Big weekend in college hoops. The season has begun. We have Carolina hosting Kansas on Friday, Michigan State hosting Arkansas on Saturday. We'll talk a little bit about both those games. And oh, by the way, we will also discuss the fact that John Calipari, he may be closing in on his next 5-star. So we got a loaded show, a jam-packed show. Before we get started, a couple quick reminders. One, make sure that you are subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. YouTube, couple subscribers away from 65,000. We cannot thank you all enough for your support. We are truly appreciative. If you are not subscribed, please make sure to do so. And also, if you listen on podcasts, make sure you're subscribed on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. By the way, before we get to today's show, also should mention that we do want to thank our friends. We do want to thank the official ticketing partner of the Aaron Torres Pod. We want to thank SeatGeek. Okay, so it's that time of year. College football is still ramping up. A lot of you guys, your teams are still good. Maybe you're a Bama fan, an A&M fan, a Georgia fan, a Ohio State fan, and you want tickets to watch your team maybe in the regular season, conference championships, college football playoff. Well, what you need to do is go to SeatGeek. It is America's #1 ticketing app, 28 million downloads. As I tell you, you know, the great thing about SeatGeek, they take care of their customers and they take care of listeners of the Aaron Torres Pod. In terms of taking care of their customers, bottom line is this. Every ticket on the app rated 1 through 10, a green dot or a red dot. Green dot means go ahead and purchase. Red dot means maybe you want to stay away from that one. But you know what I love even more about SeatGeek? They take care of listeners of this show right here. That is right. Listeners of the Aaron Torres Pod have a very special offer courtesy of our friends at SeatGeek. You can get $20 off your first purchase, $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek. And all you got to do is use promo code Torres. So any ticket to any show, any game, it doesn't have to be college football. It could be college basketball, could be the NFL, it could be a concert, it could be a show. We got a listener who just bought Backstreet Boys tickets using SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres. We really do appreciate your support, and we appreciate the support of SeatGeek. Use promo code Torres to get $20 off your first purchase. With that said, it's a busy Thursday in sports. There is no more time to waste, so let's go ahead and get to the topic of the day. Since we last spoke, the first college football playoff rankings were released. We were going to do a reaction show on Tuesday night or Wednesday morning about the playoff rankings, but I really kind of thought there wasn't, in my opinion, like some super meaty, super important topic as it pertained to the playoff rankings. And so because of it, we decided to hold till today. I'm not really going to talk much about the playoff rankings, but for those of you who did not see them or haven't really thought about them, I'll just give you the top 10 here really quickly. Ohio State at number 1. Indiana 2, Texas A&M at 3, Alabama 4, Georgia 5, Ole Miss 6, BYU's coming in at 7, Texas Tech 8, Oregon 9, Notre Dame 10. I think what's kind of interesting, Texas at 11 and Oklahoma at 12, okay? So first of all, A lot of this stuff is going to get figured out in the coming days. So, like, you don't have to overreact if you think your team is there. Like, all of this stuff is going to be played out on the field. Do think there are a couple intriguing notes from that first ranking. First of all, I think actually the most interesting thing to me, if you remember very briefly on Sunday's show, we talked a little bit about the Miami Notre Dame conundrum, right? Is basically Miami has taken a second loss. Notre Dame is right now 6-2. And remember, Notre Dame lost to Miami in the regular season to start the season on Labor Day weekend. So the issue became, if Miami has the head-to-head win, but Notre Dame is also 10-2 and playing better, what do? You take the team that beat them back in week 1, or you take the team that's actually playing better right now? Well, the committee does not seem to care about the head-to-head at all, because Miami is at number 18, Notre Dame at number 10. Now, I guess in theory, if Miami wins its final 3 games, there would be an argument that they would be ranked higher. I don't know that Miami's going to be able to make up enough ground, and we also know if Notre Dame keeps winning, they will move up. They're not going to stay at number 10. So it's interesting. Now, I don't think Miami's running the table from here. I think of concern to Miami as well. Pitt's okay, but there aren't really a lot of spots for quality wins. And I think right now they're on the outside looking in of even the ACC championship game. So it's not like you can win the ACC. They got 6-7 teams ahead of them in the standings, including 2 teams that they've already lost to in SMU and Louisville that would have to take losses from here for Miami to even qualify for the ACC championship game. So that was interesting thing number 1. Interesting thing number 2, 3 Big 12 teams in the top 13, BYU at 7, Texas Tech at 8, Utah at 13. I think it'd be a tough path for Utah to get back in. Now, they could get into the Big 12 championship game, and if they did there, then in theory they could get the auto bid. But there is a pathway for 2 teams in the Big 12. It is worth noting, of course, that BYU and Texas Tech play this weekend. So those are the playoff rankings. Again, if you want somebody to break them down team by team, like I don't think that's really what we do here. So instead, what I want to do is actually go ahead in a different direction and just talk about some interesting reaction to this week, knowing that the playoff rankings were going to come out, okay? So earlier in the week, Steve Sarkisian was kind of asked about Texas, okay? And so Texas is off this week, and Texas has a gauntlet of a back half, a final quarter, actually, if we're being perfectly honest. The final 3, they have at Georgia, they have Arkansas at home, and I know Arkansas is whatever, but Arkansas can put up points. Arkansas, if you don't show up ready to play, is going to give you a hard time, and then they do close with Texas A&M at home. So 2 of the top 6 in the final 4 or 5 weeks of the season. And, with Texas, they're going to have a chance to play their way in. But Steve Sarkisian, Texas, by the way, is on a bye this week. They don't play Georgia until next week. But I bring it up because Steve Sarkisian was kind of asked about where Texas is and all of that. And he gave an interesting answer earlier in the week. It was actually before the rankings came out. It was a long answer. We kind of condensed it for certain purposes, but basically he did the whole, hey, the SEC is really good there. You got to look out for the SEC, and we finished early, so I got to go home and watch South Carolina Ole Miss. I got to watch Florida Georgia. He then talked a little bit about previous years, kind of overcoming adversity at this time of year. But I want to play the final 30 seconds of an answer where Steve Sarkisian both says that everything's kind of in Texas's control, but also, hey, let's not forget just how darn good the SEC is. Play this out.
What can we control? How the committee handles it, I don't know, but I know we got Georgia here in 2 weeks and on the road. It's going to be a tough game, so that's where our focus is right now. And what the committee does with the teams in our conference, we'll see. But I know our conference is really deep. It's really good. Probably deserving more than 3 teams. I know that much. I think the SEC only got 3 teams in last year, which is kind of laughable, quite frankly. But we'll see what happens this year.
It's kind of laughable. The SEC only got 3 teams a year ago. Boy, oh boy, we have officially reached that moment in time. It is the magical moment every year. The calendar turns to November. The leaves start turning. You put away the pumpkins. You bring out the Thanksgiving decorations. And the SEC goes undefeated in hypothetical matchups. That is right. It is SEC hypothetical season. For those of you who are college football diehards, it's kind of a growing joke on social media of, hey, Nobody's better than the SEC in a hypothetical game they don't have to play. And here comes Steve Sarkisian already advocating, how the heck did we only get 3 teams in last year? So let's go ahead and break it down, because this is going to be the conversation over the next month. If the SEC gets 4 teams, they're going to want 5. If they get 3, they're going to want 4. If they want 5, like what I would say is this, is first of all, as you can see on the rankings, the SEC is actually in very good shape to get minimum of 4 teams into this playoff. Okay. Alabama, A&M comes in at number 3, Alabama at 4, Georgia, whose only losses to Alabama, at 5, and then Ole Miss at 6. Now, I will say, everybody's got tough games left on the schedule. I would argue Ole Miss actually probably has the easiest path to get to an 11-1 record right now. They only finished with Florida and Mississippi State, as well as the Citadel. They actually play the Citadel this weekend. Texas A&M still has Texas on the schedule. Georgia still has Texas at home. So everybody's got some tough games. Alabama's got Oklahoma. They've got LSU, etc. But first of all, the SEC is in really good shape. But I think what we also have to acknowledge is a couple things. Is one, I do think, as far as the SEC propaganda, hypothetical games, we can't start this again, because what I would say is this, is I'm not somebody that's super anti-SEC. I enjoy college football, and I do think team 1 to the bottom team, there's probably the smallest gap between the first team and the last team as any conference of college football. But the sport has changed. The landscape is changing, and we have to acknowledge this league ain't what it used to be. Okay, so first of all, I'll say this. I know I just said that the number 1 to number 16 in the SEC has never been better, but we also have to acknowledge there is some real dreck at the bottom of the SEC, okay? I'm sorry. South Carolina's terrible. They just are. Don't try to sell me that they're not. Kentucky, congrats on the win. I don't want to diminish what happened last weekend. Kentucky is not good. Arkansas, I actually think, is talented, but they don't win games. And, you are what your record says you are. Mississippi State, their only win is against winless Arkansas. Auburn's only win is against winless Arkansas. So, at what point do we acknowledge that the bottom is just really bad this year? I would also say this. I think for years, there was the argument the SEC is clearly the best conference. Then I would say that the last year or two, when Michigan won the 2023 national championship and Ohio State won it last year, there became an argument of, well, the SEC may have got caught at the top, but the middle and the bottom are so much better. Well, we already acknowledged that the bottom's kind of terrible this year. What I would also say is I think the Big Ten has kind of caught them in the middle, right? You can argue with me. You can fight with me. You can debate me. I watch all these teams. We'll see what Vandy does this weekend. I think Vandy's fine. Oklahoma's good. They're not great. Tennessee is clearly flawed because all of a sudden people are mad at Josh Heupel. But then you look at the Big Ten and it's USC's not terrible. Whatever you think of Lincoln Riley, USC is not terrible. Michigan is sitting at 6-2, 7-2 late in the year. Washington, I think, is quietly 6-2, 7-2, and has a pathway to the playoff if they win out their biggest game against Oregon at home. Iowa, that Iowa's playing Oregon this weekend. If Iowa wins that game, they are in potentially the driver's seat to make the college football playoff. So that's the other thing about the SEC, is the fact that it was always they were best from top to bottom. Then they might not be quite the best at the top, but the middle and the bottom were great. Now I think the middle is kind of the same, and I don't think there's that much of a difference between their middle, their bottom, and the SEC or the Big Ten's middle and bottom. And so we have to acknowledge the facts. We have to acknowledge what happens on the field, and we also have to acknowledge this. What Steve Sarkisian also said was fundamentally wrong. Okay, so listen, if you want to argue that this year is different than last year and that maybe we should have a fifth SEC team, we can have that conversation as we get closer to Selection Sunday. But this notion that it was this preposterous thing that the SEC only got 3 teams in last year, simply not true. Why do I say it? Well, by definition, if you're calling it preposterous or laughable, I believe was the exact quote, that the SEC only got 3 teams, well, it means one of 2 things. Either really good teams were left out, or the teams that made it totally overachieved, proving that the league was better all along than we realized. Problem is, neither of those things happened. Okay, so the SEC gets 3 teams in last year: Texas, Georgia, and Tennessee. Okay, what happens in the playoff? Because I think we all kind of remember the playoff, right? Georgia was the champion. Georgia was the deserving champion. They beat Texas twice. They played at Alabama. They played at Ole Miss. They played a brutal schedule. I'm not taking anything away from what Georgia did last year. They were a deserving SEC champion. They also went to New Orleans and lost to Notre Dame in their first college football playoff game. 0-1 in the college football playoff. Tennessee. What did Tennessee do in the college football playoff? They got boat raced and curb stomped by Ohio State. And if you want to argue that Ohio State did, well, okay. Ohio State was a great team. It doesn't change the fact that Tennessee was not in their class, and Tennessee was the third best team in the SEC last year. Then there was Texas. Yes, Texas won 2 games. The first one was against a Clemson team that was only in the college football playoff because they won the ACC championship. And then they beat an Arizona State team in a very controversial fashion in which Cam Scatterbo bullied them, in which Arizona State had well over 100 more yards of total offense than them, and in which they got a very controversial non-targeting call to end an Arizona drive, which then resulted in points for Texas, which forced overtime. We talked about that at the time. We don't need to relitigate it. But this notion that like, oh, these SEC teams, it's so tough and it's so much better. And it's like, well, the results in last year's playoff don't back it up. And the other thing I would add is this. It's not like there were great teams that were left out of the playoff. Go back to last year, okay? Who was left out? Alabama. Oh my goodness, how could we pick SMU over Alabama? It was preposterous. Well, no, it really wasn't. Because remember, going into that last weekend of the conference championship games. Now, by the way, I would argue that conference championship games are stupid in this era and we shouldn't be playing them. But we did play them last year. We are playing them this year. We're probably never taking them away. And so I bring it up because going into conference championship weekend last year, it was determined that anybody who was already in the field would not be eliminated from the field if they lost in a conference championship game. It's why Texas ended up as the 5 seed in the college football playoff. It's why Penn State ended up the 6 seed in the college football playoff. They both went to a conference championship game. They lost. They were not penalized. And SMU was not penalized because they were in the field and then they lost to Clemson. So by the committee's own bylaws, nobody was penalized. Therefore, SMU should have been in. But even if you didn't think SMU shouldn't have been in, it's not that there were amazing candidates from the SEC. I'm sorry, there just weren't. Who were the great teams in the SEC last year that got left out? Alabama, 9-3 Alabama, 9-3 Alabama, who, yes, had a great win against Georgia, had a very good win at home against South Carolina, and who also lost to 2 unranked teams in the regular season. I'm sorry, but when you go 1-3 on the road in league play, when you lose to an unranked Oklahoma, when all you have to do in November is beat an unranked Oklahoma team and you can't even put up a touchdown, I'm sorry, that eliminates you from the college football playoff. And then, oh, by the way, let's not forget last year, Alabama doesn't make the playoff. What ends up happening? Oh, I don't know. They lose a bowl game to Michigan, which could not complete a forward pass. So there's Alabama. They're out. Well, how about Ole Miss? They were 9-3. We all seem to remember Lane Kiffin whining about not getting in. They must have deserved to be in, except they really didn't. You know why? Because they had the worst loss of any contender in the college football playoff, right? Because I remember going back to last year with Indiana. People were like, Indiana hasn't beaten anybody good. It's like, yeah, but they literally destroyed all of the bad teams on their schedule, something Alabama couldn't say, and something Ole Miss certainly couldn't say. You know how I know that? Because Ole Miss lost as a 21-point home favorite to Kentucky. So I'm sorry there's no sympathy. And then, oh, by the way, even after they they came back, they beat Georgia. They're sitting at 8-2 with 2 weeks to go. What ended up happening to Ole Miss? They lost to Florida with 2 weeks left of the regular season. And I'm supposed to feel sorry that they got left out and it's a crime against humanity? I'm sorry. I didn't buy it then and I don't buy it now. Don't get Billy Napiered in Gainesville and you're going to the playoff and SMU staying at home. South Carolina was 9-3 last year. Lost to Ole Miss, lost to Alabama. They didn't deserve to be in. They lost in their bowl game, by the way, to Illinois. So I could go on and on. But I think this is going to be a theme of the coming month as we get set for that 12-team bracket. We are going to see the propaganda machine full speed ahead. Greg Sankey, all the coaches, everybody arguing that the SEC is so mighty. And I'll be honest, I just don't really see it. And I think, by the way, the SEC is going to get 4 teams this year. It's going to be as much, if not more, than anybody in college football, and they will be deserving. But the idea that it was some sort of crime against humanity that they didn't get more than 3 last year is laughable. And if somebody takes some weird losses along the way, if Georgia loses to Mississippi State or, Oklahoma's, Texas right now, Texas, perfect example. They're 7-2 going into their final 3. If you can't beat Georgia, if you can't beat A&M, and you're 9-3 and you have a terrible loss to Florida, I'm not going to feel sorry for you. So we'll see what ends up happening. But get ready. The SEC propaganda machine is at full speed ahead, and it ain't slowing down. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the most recent opening in major college football. The Auburn Tigers need a head coach. I think, one, there's been an interesting discourse on just how good the job is, period. But then, two, an interesting name maybe starting to emerge. We'll take a quick break, talk about that. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute. But before we do, I have so many people that reach out and say, Torres, you give me hours and hours and hours of free content every day, every month, every year. What can I do to help support the show? Well, you want to support the show and look good in the process. Make sure to check out and support the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Some of you wondering, what can I get in that merch store, Torres? Well, Kentucky fans, we got our Mark Pope Hope and Pope t-shirts. That is right. Mark Pope, monster first year. Year 2 is going to be even better. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirt at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is coming. It is here. John Calipari has things rocking. Get your Big Pig Invasion tees. Again, aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. St. John's fans, we have our Big Rick Energy t-shirts. And if you're just a college basketball fan in general, guess what? Your March is for Day Drinking shirt. That is the shirt that you need year-round, but especially for the next NCAA tournament. You can order yours now. By the way, football fans, we got you covered too. Nebraska fans, new era, new rules, the t-shirt that you need before the start of this coming season. And oh, by the way, if you're a Colorado fan, if you're just a Coach Prime fan, we have our Dion shirts and hats, more of them than we know what to do with. So to check out the full line of Aaron Torres Media merch and also support the show, good news is we're going to have even more for the fall. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And for more information, you can always reach out at Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. So a couple things. One, our week 11 college football picks will be available at aarontorresonline.com later today. I'll tell you this, before we get to the Auburn stuff, I actually think this is going to be like this weekend has some potential to mess some stuff up. We talked about the college football playoff rankings. I'll just say, like, Georgia at Mississippi State. Mississippi State has been on the verge of beating a lot of really good teams at home. Tennessee, Texas easily could have beaten them both. So we'll see about that one. Oregon at Iowa. I think everybody's just chalking it up for a win for Oregon. You know how hard it is to play and win at Iowa. Even Indiana barely survived. Indiana had a tougher time playing at Iowa than they did at Oregon. So there's going to be a lot of interesting games this weekend. I'll have my picks up later today. aarontorresonline.com. Let's go ahead and switch gears. Let's go ahead and talk about the most recently vacated SEC head coaching job, that of the Auburn Tigers. Okay, so if you listen to this show, if you listen to this pod, Sunday morning, we sort of reacted to Auburn losing to Kentucky, kind of knowing that the Hugh Freeze stuff was probably coming later in the day. Well, the Hugh Freeze stuff did come later in the day. We reacted once I got to Vegas. We did it live from Circus Sportsbook. And it's certainly been an eventful couple days at Auburn, okay? So Auburn fires Hugh Freeze on Sunday. DJ Durkin named the interim head coach. And, we talked a lot about, we talked about it a lot on Sunday shows, on Tuesday's show, when we talked about the Hugh Freeze golf story, which was crazy. But I think it'll be interesting to see what happens next at Auburn. Now, I've said this since before Hugh Freeze even got fired. I think DJ Durkin has a legitimate chance to get that head coaching job. You look at some of these other interim head coaches, Billy Gonzalez at Florida. I was basically told Billy Gonzalez has already thanked the support staff and the GAs and everybody as far as hey, I'm not going to be here much longer. I wish you guys the best in your journey. Billy Gonzalez was not hired to hopefully become the full-time head coach. The same with the Penn State interim. I think Frank Wilson, I would argue, much the same at LSU. But I would say that if DJ Durkin does what he may be capable of doing, I actually think Auburn wants to keep him, right? Because the players love him. I think the fans have gotten behind him because of this defense. And so, listen, he's got work to do. He's got to beat Vandy this weekend. I think there's no doubt about that. You certainly have to beat Mercer. And then I think, depending on how the Alabama game goes, I think there's an argument that you just keep him and you don't go into the coaching candidate pool. Well, I bring it up because at the same time, if Auburn hires from outside, one, I would certainly try to keep DJ Durkin as your DC. That's another conversation for another day. But two, there's been an interesting conversation, I think, the last couple days about what is the Auburn head coaching job and who are realistic candidates and who aren't. Okay. So first of all, as far as what is the Auburn coaching job, listen, I'll let every fan base that has an open job thinks their job is amazing and everybody should want to come there and they're going to get the best candidate available. Okay. But I do think the narrative around Auburn specifically is very interesting. Because there hasn't been, there's been a lot of turnover from Gus Malzahn to Brian Harsin to now Hugh Freeze and whoever's next. There clearly has been a lot of turnover. Okay. But the counter to that is there is some recent history of success. I saw Peter Burns from the SEC Network say he believes this is actually the best SEC opening. I don't know that I agree with him, but there's certainly a lot that Auburn has to offer. Great recruiting base, kind of in that part of the country, not far from Atlanta, et cetera, Alabama as well. The facilities, the money, we know NIL is where it needs to be. The other thing that I think we underestimate, there's better recent history than people realize, okay? So David Pollack, formerly of ESPN, does a great job. He's a former Georgia Bulldog, okay? So Georgia Bulldogs aren't keen to Auburn Tigers, but he put out a tweet earlier this week that caught my attention praising Auburn and its recent history. David Pollack saying, quote, "The list of teams that have played for at least 2 national championships in the last 15 years are as follows: Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State, LSU, Notre Dame, Oregon, and Auburn." I ain't hearing that Auburn ain't a special place, okay? So first of all, I give David Pollack credit. I mean, when you actually contextualize it like that, you're like, oh, crap. Last 15 years, only, 7 or 8 schools have done it, and it's the biggest brands in the sport. It's Ohio State, Notre Dame, LSU, Alabama, Clemson, et cetera. There's a lot of big-name brands that are not in that mix: Oklahoma, Texas, USC, Florida State, Miami. But you know who is in it? The Auburn Tigers. And I think, by the way, that to me is especially relevant because 15 years, what's significant about that is that it's basically the lifetime of all the high school players that you're recruiting, right? So you go back and it's like Florida was great in the 90s. To a kid that's in high school right now, the 90s might as well be the 50s. Like the way that you and I think of Army in the 40s is the way that a 15-year-old high school sophomore thinks about Florida in the 1990s. Like it's just the truth, right? Even Florida's recent national championships under Urban Meyer came, frankly, before a lot of these current high school players were born. But they all remember, Auburn playing probably at least in that 2014 national championship game against Florida State. They remember the 2017 team that played in an SEC title game, beat Alabama and Georgia. And so there is some context that does matter. So I think now the question becomes, if it isn't going to be DJ Durkin, who are the realistic candidates? And maybe more than who are the realistic candidates, like if you're an Auburn fan, who should you be shooting for as your next head coach? Not like we could get this guy. It's like, oh, this is a guy that maybe isn't on our radar, but should be. And to go back to David Pollack, I thought he brought up an interesting candidate on his show talking about Auburn, okay? So David Pollack, talking about the Auburn coaching job, was talking about a few different candidates, but he said, quote, about one candidate in specific: "Does anyone else think that Kenny Dillingham would be great? Kenny Dillingham, like Jeff Brom, is at his alma mater. Would he leave? I don't know. Probably not. But if you're going to go to Auburn and have consistent resources, that is a good job to consistently have resources." That was from David Pollack on his podcast. Let me say this. I think it is a very interesting name, and I think there are a lot of reasons to think that maybe, just maybe, Kenny Dillingham would consider the Auburn job. And I think there are some reasons to think that maybe Kenny Dillingham would not consider the Auburn job. So let's go ahead and get in. First off, as far as why he would not, because I think that's probably a fair place to start. It is worth noting he is from Arizona. He's from the Scottsdale. For people who have never been to Arizona, Tempe, Scottsdale, Phoenix are all in that same kind of area. So Tempe is where Arizona State is. I think he's technically from Scottsdale. They're all within a 20-minute drive of each other. So he's from Arizona. He's an Arizona State alum. And he's been pretty vocal about yeah, this is basically sort of my dream job. Like when he was an assistant coming up, it was well known in football circles. If Arizona State opens up, Kenny Dillingham, this hotshot young coordinator, is going to be angling for that job. And he believes that he can build Arizona State into its own power the way that, Oregon has been built into a power, the way that other schools have in recent years, et cetera. Clemson, I know Arizona State doesn't have the history of Clemson, but, kind of that kind of model. So it's going to be hard to get him away. And I think, by the way, broader conversation about most of the good candidates this year, it's weird how many of them are at their alma maters. So Jeff Brom, I don't know that I would have ever believed he was going to leave Louisville. But if, Penn State or Florida or somebody offers him 10 years, $100 million, and it's a better job, he's probably got to listen. Same with Brent Key at Georgia Tech, who is a Georgia Tech alum. So I bring it up because it's not going to be ready. It's not going to be easy to get any of these guys away from their alma maters. But I would also add, if they're going to do it, there's a lot of reasons to be intrigued, especially at a place like Auburn, especially if you're Kenny Dillingham. First of all, Kenny Dillingham, it's worth noting, I think part of the reason I would assume that David Pollack put Kenny Dillingham's name out there. Kenny Dillingham did coach at Auburn during the Gus Malzahn era. So he's familiar with the job. But then I also think there's a lot of pluses at Auburn that Arizona State simply can't offer. Okay. And I think this is going to be an interesting conversation as we get deeper into this NIL portal era. Yes, we have a Big Four, a Power Four conferences, Big 12, Big 10, SEC, and ACC. But I think we also know within that hierarchy, there are just certain jobs that are better resourced and in better position to succeed than others. And especially virtually every SEC job is virtually better than every Big 12-ish type job and ACC as well. Now, there are individual jobs that are really good. Texas Tech has everything you need to compete. I think BYU low-key has everything you need to compete. They obviously have the honor code. It's a little bit different, but I think both football and basketball have done a good job of saying, hey, if you come here and you abide by the honor code, and you ball out, you're going to have no issues with the NFL because the NFL is going to realize that whatever. You get the point. The point I'm trying to make, there are good jobs individually outside of the Big Ten and the SEC. I don't know that I put Arizona State there because the bottom line is as good as Arizona State was last year and as awesome as it was to see them win the Big 12 and make the college football playoff, it really is kind of an uphill battle, right? And you look at Arizona State, listen, I've been to Arizona, I've been to Scottsdale, I've been to Tempe, beautiful area. I just don't know that it's ever going to be the place that you are going to have this war chest of NIL money at your disposal, right? First of all, I'll say this. Behind the scenes, ASU is kind of a dysfunctional school. The school president doesn't care about sports. Bobby Hurley, the basketball coach, probably should have been fired 4 years ago, and he just keeps not getting fired. They do have a new AD. But even in the rev share era where schools are now paying, a good chunk of money for NIL, I just don't know that if you have to raise money outside of what the schools can afford to pay, that Arizona State is a place that people are lining up to give money even to a winner. Now, maybe, listen, if you do it over a 2, 5, 10-year stretch, maybe it's a little bit different in 3 years from now, 5 years from now, whatever. But I just don't think it's that easy, and I think it's always going to be a disadvantage at Arizona State. And I think all you got to do is look at the last 2 years, right? You look at Arizona State. Listen, last year was unbelievable. Picked to finish 16th in the Big 12 preseason poll. They win the Big 12, go to the college football playoff, and we talked about it earlier with the Sark conversation. They were a team that very much could have advanced to the college football playoff semifinals if they had gotten a few calls that should have gone their way, okay? But at the same time, look at how they got there. Little bit, fluky is not the right word, but it was really, how do I put it delicately? They did an unbelievable job in evaluating. They did an unbelievable job in retaining the right guys. And all the stars kind of aligned, right? Cam Scadaboo's this dude from Sacramento State that nobody else is really recruiting when he hits the portal. He ends up with you. He's awesome. It is clearly translated to the NFL. I know he's out for the year. It's disappointing, but he was awesome for you last year. Sam Levitt, your quarterback, a guy that you had a relationship with, you believed in, who also got ran out at Michigan State by the previous coaching staff. Jordan Tyson, your best wide receiver, was a player that was at Colorado. Colorado has a coaching change. Deion comes. I'm bringing my own luggage. It's a Louis. And Jordan Tyson ends up with you at Arizona State. So they had to catch a lot of breaks. It's not like Georgia. It's not like Florida. It's frankly not like Auburn, where you can, like, whatever you want to criticize Hugh Freeze about, he built a college football playoff caliber roster, mostly out of high school development and retention. I don't know that you can do that at Arizona State. You can find diamonds in the rough. You can develop guys, but one, can you find enough of them? And then two, if you find enough of them, can you retain them, right? I mean, that's the big thing. Like, again, say what you want about Auburn, but if they get the right coach, they have a lot of NFL talent and they're going to be able to retain all of them. And it's the same, by the way, at Georgia, at Texas A&M. I don't know that it's the same at Arizona State. Kenny Dillingham said this during their college football playoff run last year. He was one of the ones that was vocal about, like, yeah, we got guys being recruited off my roster right now. I know what their offers are, and I've told them once we're done, you should take that offer and get out of here because we can't afford to give you that. And so, we had John Summerall on this podcast a few weeks ago. By the way, Auburn fans, you should check that one out. But in the process, John Summerall kind of referenced, hey, we're all kind of playing Moneyball at the group of 5 level. And it's kind of the same at Arizona State. Like, it's kind of Moneyball, right? You have to find value in places that other people don't see it. You have to develop. You have to hope that players will take less money to stay. And that's just a tough place to live, right? That's a tough place to be. And that's one thing you don't have to worry about at Auburn, at Texas, at Ohio State, at Michigan. If you have good players and they're balling out and other people are offering them stuff, you could just write a blank check and say, what are they offering you? We'll match it. And that's just never the way it's going to be at Arizona State. And so to me, that's what I believe kind of sort of makes Kenny Dillingham an interesting candidate at Auburn, where maybe it's not this year where he leaves. Maybe it's next year. Maybe it's the year after. By the way, maybe it's not. Maybe it's none of it. Maybe he stays forever, or maybe last year was the one great year and it never gets back to that. But I just think it's one of those deals where at some point it is going to be so tough for him to say, I want to stay, because again, you go back to last year versus this year, you're seeing how thin how narrow the margins are, and how many, luck is the wrong word, but how many breaks you have to have along the way. Sam Levitt was awesome last year. He gets hurt. You don't have Cam Scadaboo. A couple other injuries. All of a sudden, you're sitting here at 6-3. He even said Arizona State's actually on the bye this week. And he actually said coming into the week, he said, I gave my guys a bunch of time off because they need it. It's been an exhausting season. So it's just something to think about. I'm not saying he's the number one candidate, and I'm not saying he's leaving. But I do think increasingly, as we get deeper into this rev share NIL era, I think it's probably a call that you're going to have to take. Maybe it's not this year with Auburn. Maybe it's next year when the next big job, SEC job opens. Maybe it's 2 years after that when a monster Big Ten job opens. And by the way, it doesn't just apply to him. I love Louisville. Love Jeff Brom. Think he wants to stay there forever. But if Florida offers him a 10-year, $100 million contract with all the recruits he'll have access to, it's a call he's probably got to take. Same with Brent Key. Same with Kenny Dillingham. Interesting conversation. But David Pollack thinks you got to break the bank for the coach who just made the college football playoff last year. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take one more break. We'll come back. We'll talk a crap ton of college hoops. Interesting weekend coming up. UNC hosting Kansas, Michigan State hosting Arkansas. And oh, by the way, is Arkansas about to close out on a big-name 5-star? We'll discuss that next. Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute. But before we do, you know what we got to do. We got to thank our friends. We got to thank our partners. We got to go ahead and thank Cauley Puffs and CauleyPuffs.com. Yeah, you see the logo on the back of the screen right here. Okay, so I've told you all about Cauley Puffs, but family-owned company, not far from where I live. Joey, a huge sports fan. And one day he was sitting on the couch and he said, you know what? I need a snack that is both healthy but delicious, something my kids are going to love, something my family's going to love, something I'm going to love. And so he came up with Cauley Puffs. This is the new age health food snack. You don't need to go to the grocery aisle and buy all that crap, the Doritos, the Fritos. No, my friends, you need Cauley Puffs. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients, But here's the best part. They taste freaking delicious. Actually, there's another best part. In addition to tasting delicious, in addition to being healthy, they are also taking care of listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. Okay, so check this out. All you got to do is go to Caulipuffs.com. That's CAULIPUFFS.com, Caulipuffs.com, and you can get 15% off any purchase with the promo code Torres. That's Torres, Torres. It's that simple. 15% off any purchase. 1 bag to try them out, 100 bags to cater a party. Doesn't really matter. Promo code Torres. Caulipuffs.com gets you 15% off. Caulipuffs also available on Amazon. You obviously can't get the promo code there, but Caulipuffs.com, promo code Torres gets you 15% off any purchase. Thank you to our friends at Caulipuffs. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Let's get to a couple comments in the chat before we switch gears over to hoops. Look at this. Jay watching from Regensburg, Germany. I don't know where that is. I have been to Germany before. Munich, at least when I was there 15 years ago, was a very beautiful city. I hope you're drinking a cold beer. So if my math is correct, it is, let's see here, 11. It should be about 4:45 or so over there, if my math is correct. Hope you're having a cold one. We appreciate your support from Regensburg, Germany. We appreciate you, Jay. What else we got, producer Matt? Charles for president. Charles nominating himself for president. Bold. Sounds like something I'd do. I'm not going to lie. He says Auburn can be great, but they need a great coach once again, along with the talent. When AU is rocking, it's a very tough place to play. Listen, first of all, great comment, Charles. Two, this is part of the frustration with Hugh Freeze. It's not just, it's a lot of things. It was probably number one, the offense, but he went 0-3 in SEC home games to start this year. It's like Auburn should never lose 3 straight SEC home games. Now, I understand they were all winnable, but they weren't winnable because your offense stunk. And listen, the Georgia thing was weird. We talked about it in real time, okay? But the counter to that is that even if the Georgia loss is the loss, you got to beat Missouri. You certainly got to beat Kentucky. We'll see what happens this weekend as they get set to go to Vandy. Anything else, Matt? Or should we move on? All right, let's go ahead and move on. And by the way, we're going to talk, by the way, again, quick reminder, college football picks available at AaronTorresOnline.com. AaronTorresOnline.com for our college football picks. By the way, I do think Auburn +7 in the Circa Sportsbook. That feels like a very strong bet in my opinion. I'll have all my picks out later today. Speaking of the Circa Sportsbook, before we get to college hoops, it's that time of year. College football is here. College basketball is here. And I want to thank our hotel and casino partners, Circa Sportsbook and the Circa Casino. Okay, I was at Circa on Monday and Tuesday. Place is unbelievable in Vegas. May have put a couple futures down in the world of college basketball. But if you need a place to gamble, hang out, shows, concerts, whatever, when you're in Vegas, Circa is the place to do it. By the way, Circa does everything, man. They're having a concert series outside the hotel in a couple days. And it's worth noting, by the way, I would also add this. They have opened up a brand new sports book, Mint Kentucky Downs, Franklin, Kentucky. And I also found out that when Missouri launches sports betting in a few weeks, Circa will be there as well. So Circa's all over the place. Like I said, if you're in Vegas, it's the place you got to check out. If you're not in Vegas, make sure to check out the new Circa Sportsbook, Mint Kentucky Downs, Franklin, Kentucky. All the same hospitality of the Circa Sportsbook in Vegas, all the great ambiance. And by the way, this YouTube ESPN thing, it looks like it ain't going away. YouTube TV, ESPN. So if you need a place to watch games because your YouTube TV is down and you're in Franklin, Kentucky, if you're in that area, you got to check out Mint Kentucky Downs. It's about 40 minutes or so from Nashville. It's right on that Kentucky-Tennessee border, not far from the Indiana border, Ohio border. If you're anywhere in that area, check out Mint Kentucky Downs, the new Circa Sportsbook in Franklin, Kentucky. We appreciate their support. By the way, in about 2 weeks, I'll be back at Circa Sportsbook in Vegas for the Players Era Championship. All right, let's switch gears. Let's talk a little college basketball. You know, it's that time of year. There's going to be a lot of kind of crossover between the two sports on this show. And what I would say about it is this, is that, you know, I guess it would have been Tuesday's show. We reacted to the big doubleheader on Monday. Arizona beats Florida. BYU beats Villanova, if you missed any of that. Last couple nights have been a little bit quieter. Duke did beat Texas on that that second night of college basketball. That was on Tuesday. I don't know that we have a ton to really react to. I actually thought Texas played very well. Texas did a very good job early of limiting Cam Boozer. And I think Texas, to me, they're going to be, a problem is maybe a little bit hyperbolic. But, we've talked about all these big SEC teams, Arkansas and Kentucky and Florida and Alabama and Tennessee. Texas has a real coach now. And they have some good players back from last year, Tremont Mark and Jordan Pope. I thought they did as good of a job against Duke as you could. Sean Miller actually said after the game, we did a good job slowing down Cam Boozer, and he still had 15 and 13. That shows you how good that he is. But I'll just tell you, you want a little bit of a wild card team in the Big 12. I think Texas is going to give people all sorts of fits. Duke gets the win on Tuesday night. We don't really have to spend much time on that. And I certainly don't want to spend much time on Kentucky struggling against Nichols, okay? I will be real. I pulled the old Abe Simpson meme on this game. So I got home from Vegas right as this game was tipping off on Wednesday or Tuesday night, excuse me. And I was like, I got to check it out. And I turned it on, the old streaming app, and it was 13-7 with 8 minutes to go in the first half. And I was 13 points in the first half. And I pulled the old Abe Simpson meme and I grabbed my hat and I walked right back out. I was like, life is too short to watch this nonsense. And so Kentucky struggled. They pulled away late. Listen, I'm not going to sit here. Listen, if we get to another game or two and they play Louisville next week, so we're going to find out quick. But, we get to another game or two and this team's struggling, okay. But remember, this is a situation where, in my opinion, hold on one second. Oh, I don't know why. There's a Matt. Is the audio okay? Is everything sounding okay? Okay, cool. It's I'm hearing some sort of talk back in my ear, but I'm just making sure that as long as the audience can hear me fine, that's all I care about. All right, so Abe Simpson, as I said, it was not pretty. I'm not going to overreact. Jalen Lowe, the starting point guard, is still out. Any team without their starting point guard is going to struggle, whether it's, Duke without Caleb Foster, whether it's Michigan State without Jeremy Fears, who we'll talk about in a minute. You got to get everybody healthy. Denzel Aberdeen did start the second half, did play well, and the offense looked better. Not going to overreact to Kentucky. They obviously have another game here before Louisville, but they do have to get things figured out. With that said, though, we'll talk Louisville, Kentucky next week. What I want to do is talk a couple marquee matchups this coming weekend because we got some good ones. And what I want to start with is the old blue blood showdown in beautiful Chapel Hill, North Carolina, okay? So a very intriguing game between two teams that I think, frankly, kind of, sort of, I think Kansas maybe kind of has that signature win from the preseason. So people aren't as much on Kansas's back on North Carolina. But what I would also say is both these teams, I think, have something to prove to the general public. North Carolina ranked number 25, hosting the Kansas Jayhawks. We do not have a line yet via the Circa Sportsbook, but let's go ahead and dive into this one because I think this is a game that could set the tone for one of these two teams. Hubert Davis squarely on the hot seat, needs some signature wins. North Carolina's kind of scaled back their out-of-conference schedule, so this is a good chance to get one. And then, like I said, with Kansas, I think the Louisville game, maybe anybody who had real doubts, maybe doesn't have as many anymore, but let's go ahead and dive in. North Carolina, listen, to their credit, North Carolina took care of business in their opener against Central Arkansas. I know, I was thinking about this. So we're told that we can't take anything away from exhibitions, right? And then we're told when teams play bad teams, you can't take anything. So at what point can I take something away from something, right? Because with North Carolina, listen, their season, Hubert Davis's career is not going to be defined by beating Central Arkansas 94-54 in the season opener. The counter to that is everything that you kind of wanted to see out of Carolina, you did see in that game, and I would take it a step further. I thought they looked really good in the exhibition game against BYU in Salt Lake City a few weeks ago. I watched that entire game start to finish, and they probably should have won that game. in terms of the Central Arkansas game for North Carolina, what I would say is a couple things. One, they got back Luka Bogovic, or they got Luka Bogovic is probably the best way to say it. So Luka Bogovic, for people who don't remember, European star, he's kind of one of those players, a little bit older, 22 years old, was a professional in Europe. He committed very late in the process, in late May. He was really the last big pickup for North Carolina. But I bring it up to say he is and was and will be a very important piece into what North Carolina does. And as of about, noon Eastern time on Monday, the day of the season opener, he was not eligible. Now, it was a weird thing. He had been cleared by the NCAA, but the school actually had not cleared him for competition yet. I don't have all the facts, but Hubert Davis seemed a little bit frustrated about it. I don't blame him. I would have been too. But he was cleared right before the game. The player said he was actually taking a nap when he found out. So he kind of woke up and he's kind of groggy and he's all excited and he throws on his uniform and he goes out to play. So he is eligible and ready to go. And then I think the other thing that stands out, Caleb Wilson's a dude now, okay? And listen, the conversation about all these freshmen is going to go on all season long. But I think everybody, is super fired up about the big three, Darren Peterson, AJ DeBonsa, and Cam Boozer. Monday night, Koa Pete was awesome at Arizona. The two Arkansas guards, Darius Acuff and Malik Thomas, who we'll discuss in a minute, were awesome as well. And Mike, now can you hear me? Test. No? What's going on? We have sound quality? Okay. Sound issues. Okay. My apologies. Sorry. We're having a little technical difficulties here today. All right. So cut that out, Matt, later on. And with North Carolina, Caleb Wilson's a dude. Okay. So Caleb Wilson, as I was saying, is the three freshmen that everyone's going to talk about: Darren Peterson at Kansas, AJ DeBonsa at BYU, Cam Boozer at Duke. Okay. And then you had Monday night where Koa Pete was awesome, where Malik Thomas and Darius Acuff were awesome and will be awesome all year. Caleb Wilson, to me, is kind of that guy that has been lost in the shuffle. Like I said, in that win or that loss to BYU, I thought he was awesome in that exhibition. I thought in many ways he outplayed AJ DeBonsa. And then against Central Arkansas, he was fantastic. 22 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. And so beyond him, I think what also stood out is a couple things. Is one, you had a situation where basically the two things that you wanted to see from Carolina, you saw. First of all, the size is very obvious, right? Size matters. We all know it, et cetera, et cetera. But I bring it up because in the offseason, we all know that Duke was kind of the team that they were modeling themselves after. Duke last year positionally had as much size as maybe any team I've ever seen. Everyone on the floor at all times was basically 6'6" or bigger. North Carolina didn't quite get there. But Henry Visar at 7 feet, Jaron Stevenson at 6'11", Caleb Wilson, that's your starting front line. And then the guards, for the most part, are big as well. Jaden Young, Jonathan Powell. And so you saw that. You saw the three-point shooting is still good. And I think you actually saw from North Carolina what you wanted to. Conversely, I would say Kansas is looking the part too early. And I think with Kansas, the bigger takeaway is probably the win at Louisville. And the Darren Peterson stuff, I mean, it's already starting to take off, right? I saw Sports Illustrated put out an article quoting NBA players who have played with them like he could be in the NBA right now. He could have been in the NBA last year. Doug Gottlieb, who, of course, coaches Green Bay. Now, he works at Fox Sports Radio as well, said that Darren Peterson's the closest he's seen to Kobe since Kobe. Love you, Doug. Feels a little bit aggressive, but you're certainly entitled to your opinion. But the Darren Peterson stuff is real. I think what I maybe didn't fully anticipate, some of the pieces around him are really good. A couple guys that have stood out. First of all, we always forget, or at least I kind of have forgotten, Elmarco Jackson is a really good college basketball player. McDonald's All-American, missed all of last year with injury, and I think they really missed him a year ago. And then conversely, I would also add Bryson Tiller, the big man who is kind of like a top 30-ish recruit who redshirted last year. He looks pretty good. Melvin Council looks pretty good. And so all of a sudden, if you have a true superstar in Darren Peterson, and then you have good role players around him, guess what? You're going to be really good, and that's exactly how they looked against Green Bay on opening night. That's exactly how they looked when they played at Louisville. They finished the game on Monday night with 94 points, 10 of 27 from three. They're shooting the ball well. I think they're going to defend better without Hunter Dickinson. and they looked the part. As far as Friday night is concerned, listen, we don't have a line yet from Circus Sportsbook. If we did, I would not bet it. I just got to learn more about both these teams, right? Both had very good exhibition showings. Again, UNC didn't beat BYU, but they played well. Kansas did beat Louisville. And my normal hunch would be to just take the team that's, got the best player in Darren Peterson. I think there's something about North Carolina, though. I listen, we've all been critical of Carolina, but they had a game plan. And listen, they're kind of like Kentucky, right? They spend a lot of money, but who cares? If you win, it does not matter. Now, if you lose, heads are going to roll, right? Let's use the baseball analogy. The Dodgers, people forget, did not have the highest payroll to start the season in Major League Baseball. It was actually the New York Mets. Then the New York Mets started losing. Players got traded. People got fired, whatever. And it's kind of the same in college basketball. It doesn't matter how much you're spending on a roster unless the team stinks, then there's going to be hell to pay. But I like the pieces for Carolina. I like how they fit. And I do think that at home, they do enough to get the win. So I wouldn't bet it. I don't feel great, but I think with Luka Bogovic back, with Caleb Wilson playing the way that he is, I think he can be a little bit of a mismatch problem as much as Darren Peterson can. I'll say Carolina wins 90-88. I don't feel great about it, but they do enough at home to get the win. Let's switch gears to the other big game in college hoops this weekend. This is awesome, by the way. Listen. So I work for Fox Sports Radio. I have zero to do with programming at Fox, Big Fox. I love the fact that they are putting mainstream college basketball on the first weekend of the season as the Arkansas Razorbacks, 14th ranked team in the country. They are headed to play the Michigan State Spartans on Saturday night, national audience, 7 p.m. Eastern. This one is going to be awesome. As far as the two teams, let's start with Arkansas. Listen, I'm telling you, Arkansas looks the freaking part, okay? And listen, time is going to tell. Maybe it starts this weekend. Maybe it doesn't, whatever. We're either going to find out if they're good enough or they're not, okay? But I've said since May, the reason that I was confident in John Calipari's team is two reasons. One, we talk about retention all the time. We talk about the fact that to win in college basketball, you need players that have been there before. So I find it funny that all the big analysts that cover college basketball, you need older players and you need retention. But for whatever reason with Arkansas, they don't get credit for it, right? They return the most production in the SEC. And the only guy besides me that I've heard talk about it is John Rothstein. John Rothstein, to his credit, has been like, dude, return the most players, return the most production, like take them seriously. Everybody else is like, it's Arkansas. It's John Calipari. The advanced analytics don't like him. A lot of the analysts don't like him. But they've looked the part so far. Now, coming into this game, it's worth noting Carter Knox, we don't know if he's going to play, dealing with a toe injury. He did not play in Arkansas's opener the other night against Southern. But, I'll say this about Arkansas. They've looked the part through two exhibitions. They looked the part against Southern. And if you listen to John Calipari after the game, he basically said, I don't think we played up to our standard. I think we could have played better. And that is after a game in which the Arkansas Razorbacks put up 109 points and won by 32 points. And with Arkansas, it's so funny. I go back to this time last year, and this isn't like tear down what they were last year. They dealt with injuries all kind of preseason. Remember, Nelly Davis was in and out of the lineup. Big Z was in. Well, actually, Big Z was good to go. But Jonas Adu was in and out of the lineup. Trevin Brazil started the season. Then he got hurt, and it took him a while to get going. And I only bring it up because you think back to some of those games last year where they were struggling to put away bad teams. They were trailing in the first half. That ain't their issue this year as they put up 109 in a game that was not competitive, 57 in the first half, and had a 25-point halftime lead. As far as what you need to know, we don't know about Carter Knox, but two things stood out about that opener. One, the two freshmen are unbelievable, man. And I'll say this, we had a commenter a few weeks ago after the second exhibition game say something to the effect of Arkansas's stars last year are now role players this year. And I thought it was a little hyperbolic. We were getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. Then I was like, is that guy right? Because through the first couple exhibitions in the first regular season game, those two freshmen are absolutely taking over. Darius Acuff in the opener, 22 points and 4 assists. Malik Thomas off the bench playing 29 minutes, 21 points, 7 assists, 4 of 10 from 3. I thought it was interesting. Cal kind of said, I want to play both of those guys more than we have. And I think the insinuation is there are two best players. We have to play them together. So it's very interesting. Those guys are spectacular. And I think the other thing, the guy that kind of got lost in the shuffle last year that stepped up late, Trevin Brazil has been awesome. 25 points and 11 rebounds in the opener against Southern. I know it's going to be much tougher against Michigan State, but remember, this guy was awesome in the SEC tournament last year. He was awesome in the NCAA tournament against St. John's and against Kansas, and he was awesome early, and I think he's the X factor. I just think, I'll be honest, I haven't really thought about this, but I'm thinking about it in real time. If you're playing him at the 4 and either Nick Pringle or Malik Ewan at the 5, I don't know that there is a team in America that's not a mismatch problem for down low. Trevin Brazil creates so many mismatches, especially at the 4. And I think he's one of the more underappreciated players in all of college basketball. So Arkansas gets the win. Arkansas looks the part. You know who did not look the part of a top 25 team on Monday night? It was the Michigan State Spartans. So Michigan State plays Colgate. Now, Colgate historically is a pretty good team out of their conference in the Patriot League. It is also Colgate, though. Michigan State wins 80-69, but this was a 3-point game at halftime. It was close deep into the second half. Obviously, like I said, they pulled away late. But, I mean, we are talking about a game that was, even with 5 minutes to go, it was like an 8-point game with 5 minutes to go. This is against Colgate. So we can discuss the particulars in a second. But producer Matt, give me a thumbs up. We have the Tom Izzo sound after the game. Here is Tom Izzo addressing his team's performance and what's going to happen next if they play like that again.
And I didn't think we played very well. So a lot of work to do, and we're going to get our ass embarrassed on Saturday. And maybe that's good. It's good to have that pressure on us. Questions?
So that was Tom Izzo talking about his team's performance. And as you can tell, he is not happy. And I don't know that he should be happy with that performance because it was really ugly. Listen, I think the thing that stands out, I know it becomes a cliche talking point at a certain point, but I think it's accurate and I think it's fair with this Michigan State team. It's kind of the same team every year. Whatever you think about Cal, this year's team is way different than last year, and he had some good teams at Kentucky. He had some not so good teams, but every year is a new thing. With Michigan State, it's they're kind of the same team every year. They don't shoot a lot of threes. They don't shoot them well. The big guys are big and physical, but they're not super skilled. And I'm sorry, but that's kind of what I see this season. You look at the opening night, you look at their exhibition. By the way, they went to UConn, and listen, UConn is my preseason national championship pick, but UConn was without Braylon Mullins and Terrace Reed, their best shooter and their best physical low post player, and UConn still beat them. And then Michigan State struggled with Colgate. And so again, you don't want to take nothing out of those games, but you don't want to take everything out of it either. And you don't want to take, you don't want to take nothing out of it. You don't want to take everything. And to me, Michigan State kind of looks like Michigan State usually does. Shot 28% from 3. They did take a lot of free throws. They had a 31 free throw advantage. Now, they were much bigger and much more physical in the paint. And Jackson Kohler is a big physical guy, 16 points, 15 rebounds. But they just kind of look like every other Michigan State team. And so this one I do have a pick on. I don't know what the spread is going to be. My guess, Circle will have Arkansas as a slight favorite, maybe Michigan State a slight favorite. I think Arkansas goes in, and I think Arkansas wins because I think Arkansas is the better team. And I think there's a couple variables here. One, they at least got the they got the road game under their belt when they went to Memphis. Now, I know there was a lot of Arkansas fans there. I know Memphis maybe isn't as good as Michigan State, but I think it was important being on the road, especially for those young guys. Darius Acuff, especially early, did not look good, okay? But at the same time, I think having played on the road helps. And I think transparently, two things. One, I've said since the day the AP poll came out, Arkansas is better than the 14th best team in the country. And I'll be honest, I don't think Michigan State's very good. I didn't have them in my final top 25, and I'm not criticizing people who did. I just don't think they're that good. You look at them. Yes, they have the veteran point guard and Jeremy Fears. I like him, but they don't have a lot of three-point shooting. outside of Cohen Carr, who might actually be the most athletic player in college basketball, they don't have a lot of athleticism. Now, in their defense, they did bring in a transfer by the name of Caleb Glenn, who's out for the year with an injury. So I can't blame everything on the roster construction, but there's a couple things. Are they athletic enough? I think they're going to face one of the few teams in college basketball that has the size and physicality to match them. And then beyond that, what I also think is this. I just think Arkansas has better players. And so again, Cohen Carr is phenomenal, okay? If you've not seen him, this guy is the human highlight reel of college basketball. Mostly just a dunker, can't really shoot. If he was, let me put it this way, if Cohen Carr could shoot 37% from three, he would have been in the NBA a long time ago because he's got that kind of athleticism. But you just look at the front line. Michigan State's not going to be able to bully Arkansas the way that they did with Colgate. They couldn't bully UConn. And are they going to be able to stay in front of Arkansas's guards? Are they going to be able to stop Arkansas's guards? And are they going to be able to keep Arkansas's guards off the line? And then the other thing is, I think after, what John Calipari deemed to be a defensive performance that could have been better against Southern, I think you get a much better defensive performance against Arkansas as well. So I will say final score in this one, 81-67. I think it's definitely a little bit more physical and low scoring than North Carolina, Kansas. But give me the Arkansas Razorbacks to win the game at the Breslin Center. And I'll tell you this, if they win this game, I think they will be the talk of college basketball going into next week. By the way, Arkansas, plenty of tests in December. They play Louisville at home. They play Texas Tech on a neutral. They play Houston on a neutral. They play Duke on a neutral. So we got plenty of tough tests ahead. But this is Arkansas have a little bit of a soft spot on the schedule after this one. So this will be the first big test. And whether they win or lose, we'll probably overreact because it's going to be a while before they play Duke on Thanksgiving Day. All right. There is one more topic that I do want to go ahead and wrap with. And it is actually semi-Arkansas involved. It is recruiting involved. And it involves the recruitment of a 5-star player in the class of 2026 named Baba Olatunji. Okay, so Baba Olatunji is a guy we have not talked about a lot on this podcast. We usually cover most of the big recruitments, but this year it's been kind of interesting, right? The top of the class isn't as good. Last year, again, the recruitment of A.J. DeBonsa, the recruitment of Caleb Wilson, the recruitment of Darius Acuff, Malik Thomas, Chris Sinak Jr. at Houston, Darren Peterson, whatever. We haven't talked a lot about these guys, but Baba Olatunji, a very unique player. He was in the class of 2027. He was the number 1 ranked player in the class of 2027. And towards the end of the summer, he decided to reclassify. That obviously means he moved up. He changed, his high school class from 2027 to 2026. So he is a senior. He will be committing here in the coming days. And by the way, quick side note, I think we're going to see more reclassifications. I just think the money now is so good in college. And then, of course, the money is great in the pros if you can get there, that I think we're going to see even in the class of 2027, like Bruce Branch is the new number 1. I think he reclassifies by the end of the year. So I think some of those top 2027 guys are going to come down to 2026. I think we're going to see it year over year with different classes. But Baba Olatunji was in 2027, is in 2026. Should mention, by the way, 6'10" forward. Listen, he shoots a lot of threes. He's more perimeter-based. People are going to compare him to Kevin Durant. No one should be comparing anyone to Kevin Durant. He's one of the greatest players of all time, but kind of that game, super skinny, super tall, great three-point shooter, whatever. Well, I bring it up because obviously after he reclassified, the recruitment picked up. And in recent days, Baba Olatunji has cut his list to 4. The final 4 for Baba Olatunji, 6'10" forward, top 10 prospect, class of 2026. They are as follows. It is Maryland, Georgetown, Kentucky, and Arkansas. I'll say this. I'll go ahead and dive into this. I think Arkansas is the favorite. I think Arkansas, barring something surprising, is going to get him. I think John Calipari is going to have his next 5-star. And I think Arkansas might end up with the number 1 recruiting class in the country. So let's go ahead and dive into all of it. So with Baba Olatunji, I'll say this. What I was surprised by when he cut his list to 4, it wasn't just who was on the list, but actually who was not on the list. Let me put it that way. And the reason being, if you had asked me 10 days ago or a week ago before he cut this list, who do you think will make the final cut? One school that I thought for sure would make the final cut is Virginia Tech. Now, a lot of people would sit there and say, well, Virginia Tech, that feels kind of weird. Well, here's the context with Virginia Tech. Bob Olatun's dad played at Virginia Tech, okay? And so he is a legacy recruit. He is a very important recruit for a coaching staff that is very much on the hot seat. And it was kind of well known in recruiting circles that Virginia Tech basically told the family, if this is about money, we will match or surpass any offer that you get. Like, we are not losing you over money. Whatever money you want, we're going to take care of you. You're a legacy recruit. We have to have you. It's also worth noting, by the way, Virginia Tech did get an infusion of NIL cash. They actually should be kind of an interesting team this year. They have a European guy, a guy from Greece, who many believe could have been drafted if he had stayed in the draft. He's now at Virginia Tech. So Baba would have been a natural follow-up to him. So the fact that he was not in that recruitment, or Virginia Tech was not in that Final Four, kind of surprising if I'm being perfectly honest. So looking at the rest of the four, this is what I can kind of tell you. As of right now, always subject to change, but as of 12:15 Eastern time on November 7th, I don't think Kentucky's really a factor. And I think part of it is, right now, the assumption with Kentucky is still the focus is Tyron Stokes. Now, we talked about Tyron Stokes. I did a standalone video on Wednesday, Tyron Stokes is no longer enrolled at his high school, okay? Now, we talked a little bit about it. If you missed it, we don't need to, go through all of the details here. But I bring it up because, to me, Tyron Stokes is still the priority for Kentucky. Now, why he's no longer enrolled at school, the reports are out there. You can look into it, but it was due to disciplinary issues. My understanding is, and I said this on Wednesday, it's not so bad that it would stop Kansas, Kentucky, or Oregon from recruiting Tyron Stokes. That's his final three. But I think the priority right now is Tyron Stokes. I think if you get Tyron Stokes, maybe you go after Caleb Holt. But whatever you think of Mark Pope, whatever you think of the situation, I don't think he's a guy that's going to bring in 4, 5, 6 freshmen every year. And I think the priority is Tyron Stokes and Caleb Holt. And then, if Tyron Stokes doesn't come, if something happens, then maybe Christian Collins, who has released his final three. I don't really think Bob Olatunji is really in the mix at Kentucky. Maryland. So Bob Olatunji is from Maryland. I'll also say this. Have you seen a Buzz Williams coach team? Like, I don't know if you're familiar with Buzz Williams' game, okay? But when I say Buzz Williams, I don't think the first thing that immediately jumps to mind is 6'10" guard, basically, that hangs out on the perimeter and shoots threes. If you're 6'10" and you're playing for Buzz Williams, you look like you could play tight end in the NFL. You basically cannot shoot, and you bang down low and get a lot of offensive rebounds, right? That Texas A&M last year was an unbelievable watch because they were one of the worst shooting teams I've ever seen and one of the best offensive rebounding teams that I've ever seen as well. When you miss a lot of shots, you got to get a lot of rebounds. And to Texas A&M's credit, they did. But Bob Olatunji does not strike me as a guy that is going to play for Maryland and Buzz Williams because, listen, at a certain point, we can talk about NIL money. We can talk about whatever. It is about fit and it is about development. And I don't think you're going to get developed to be into that kind of player for Buzz Williams at Texas A&M. I haven't really thought about it, but has Buzz Williams ever had a one-and-done type talent? I don't think he really has. And if he hasn't, you're putting yourself in a tough spot. So that leaves Georgetown and Arkansas. I would say this about Georgetown. It certainly feels like they're in a pretty good spot NIL-wise. And I don't know if that's because in this rev share world, they don't have FBS football, so they can spend more on the basketball team. But they just got actually a commitment from a top 20 prospect named Alex Costanza, who was actually one of the highest rated recruits they've ever signed in this, high school recruiting rankings era, in the internet recruiting rankings era. So they clearly have money. I think they're going to be pretty good this year. They beat Kentucky at Rupp, and maybe they have a little bit of momentum. They are the hometown school, so maybe they can get there. Certainly financially, I think they can. But I think this is going to be Arkansas. Arkansas has prioritized him from the beginning. I think what's interesting is this list cut, the cutting the list to 4, came right after 2 significant things. One, he just visited Arkansas like 2 weeks ago. I think it was for the Auburn football game. So we're talking like literally 2 weeks ago. And then on top of that, let's also remember this. John Calipari flew out to see him on Monday, or Tuesday, I guess it would have been, right after the big win. And in a situation where, right before he cut his list, right? And so, I mean, let's just do some mental math. John Calipari picks up a big win. He flies out to see the kid. The kid then cuts his list. I'm not great at arithmetic, as the kids say, but the math adds up there, right? The math is mathing because, listen, a couple things. One, I've covered Cal long enough to know he's not chasing kids that he has no chance of getting. I mean, he was the one that created the hat on the table theory of, I don't want to be a hat on the table. If we're not in the mix, don't put us on your list. If we're on your list and I tell you, and we're not a factor, I'm going to let the media know that we're not a factor. So I'm not getting criticized when I don't land a kid. Okay. And so I don't think Calipari is flying out to see him the morning after the season opener unless he really believes he's going to get this kid. So I think they're in good position. It sounds like he's ready to commit soon, and we'll see if Calipari can close him. If Calipari can't close him, I'll tell you this, that's a pretty darn good recruiting class because you already got J.J. Andrews, who I think is going to be a top 5 player in this class when it's all said and done. I think J.J. Andrews' recruitment has actually been hurt by the fact that he committed so early that people just haven't watched a lot of him because the recruitment isn't interesting. We know where he's going. And then on top of that, you get Abdu Torres from the beautiful state of Connecticut, West Haven, Connecticut, committed about 3 or 4 weeks ago over Providence. So you add Bobo Oladaton, that's basically 2 top 10 prospects, plus a third guy that I think is going to be about a top 30 prospect or so. That is a heck of a class. And then you can go into the spring and you can maybe try to close a Jordan Smith, somebody else. But what I like, those are NBA players, NBA size, NBA athleticism. And I'll tell you this, Arkansas, which is probably going to lose Carter Knox after this year, they would certainly be set on the wing. They're going to lose Trevin Brazil at the 4. I think Baba Oladaton could be a 3 or a 4. And there is a lot of talent that would remain on that roster. All right, I'll tell you what, kids. It is Friday. I got to go ahead and get out of here. I do see the chat is humming. Slam Tana, I love this, says Michigan State just needs some G Leaguers. Of course, Tom Izzo was the most vocal proponent of it. So yeah, Big A says, hopefully we get Carter Knox back. Chris Archer says Arkansas will win the Natty in basketball this season. They're loaded top to bottom. Of course, a lot of people disagree with Chris Archer. And we have Paul, who said he was on his way to work, who's going to go back and listen to the beginning. Paul, we appreciate your support. And frankly, we appreciate everybody's support as well. Should mention, by the way, Temple of Brutus brings up a great point. We got another good game in college hoops that I did not mention. St. John's hosting Bama. My only criticism, too many good games on Saturday during football season. Could we get some of these games on a Wednesday or Thursday night? Could we have not played St. John's against Alabama at the Garden tonight, rather than on a Saturday? Because, that's a game that, listen, it's going to be on FS1 at noon Eastern. I don't know how many people, I love college basketball, but, my priorities are probably going to be elsewhere. I'm guessing a lot of people's will be as well. At least the Carolina-Kansas game is on Friday night, and then the Arkansas game will be on Big Fox on Saturday. All right, guys and girls, out of respect, we got to go ahead and get out of here. Thank you for your support. Lot of good conversation, a lot of good discussion, but we're going to go ahead and get out of here. Time for me to go. Thank you for your support. Shout out to Torrent Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick, you F-head, unblock me, bro. We'll be back Sunday morning. There's going to be a lot of college football to react to. Like I said, I think this week could get a little crazy. Wouldn't stun me if Oregon beat or Iowa beat Oregon. Wouldn't stun me if Georgia beat Mississippi State. Alabama's going to have their hands full with LSU. We'll be back